And let's move on to the person we all came here to hear today. And before I formally introduce Mel, let me just say that from the day Mel and John came through our doors, we have been very blessed, very fortunate to have both of them with us. Mel was born in Lakeland, Florida. He lived on a small family farm and was a dedicated musician until he joined the Navy at 18. After submarine training in Connecticut, he was stationed on a submarine in Hawaii, tough duty. 10 years later, after serving on several vessels and other training duty stations, he left the Navy in Jacksonville, Florida. That same year, he began working for Lockheed Martin. Mel traveled the world as an engineer working on Navy ships throughout the U.S. and abroad until he left Lockheed in 1996. He spent the next couple of years traveling across America and worked the summer of '97 at Yellowstone National Park as a boiler technician. After driving back and forth across America a few times, Mel eventually took a job with Gulfstream Aerospace in Savannah, Georgia. He worked there for a couple of years, but missed his all-expense-paid traveling adventures. His prior boss sought him out and asked him to return in 2000. The travel returned, and so did the rejoicing. In '03, he accepted a permanent position with Lockheed in Huntsville, Alabama. There he met his one, Mountain Light pianist and music director John Pruitt. He finished his career and retired from Lockheed in 2017. At that time, he and John moved to their home in Blue Ridge full-time. Mel now spends his time cooking, gardening, and cleaning at their Airbnb and taking care of John and the two super hunter Norwegian elk hounds, Rags and Bo, the two protectors of the garden and all-around scoundrels. The title of Mel's speech talk today is "Because Someone Taught Me That, My Journey to Becoming More Than What I Was Taught." Mel Tidwell. Try not to take your sermon away. There you go.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I can't believe I'm here again already. I have a lot of friends online that I'm appreciative of being here. John and Beth, Sue, my neighbor Donna, my best friends Rick and Fred, they're all here to join us today. But before I begin, I want to say thank you to my sister Daphne and my daughter by choice Tammy for being here all the way from Florida. I want y'all to know I'm healing. I hope all of our family can bear witness to what life can become, no matter where you start. Okay, so you want to know why some people call me hateful names? Because someone taught them that. You want to know why many men I served with in the Navy are homophobic? It's because someone taught them that. One of my most profound experiences of acceptance happened in my own home. It still affects me to this day and is the direct impetus for this topic. I had recently moved in with John at his home in Huntsville, Alabama. My niece and namesake Melissa and her 5-year-old daughter Kaysen were visiting, and I had to do laundry. I was in the bedroom folding clothes on the bed when little Kaysen came in and wanted to help. She always wanted to help with chores. She folded her first piece of clothing and looked at me very nonchalantly and asked, which side of the bed do you sleep on? And which side does Uncle John sleep on? I can still see that innocent little face. You see, she just wanted to know which side of the bed to put my clothes on and which side for Uncle John. She wasn't passing judgment. She didn't care that I loved a man. You see, she wasn't taught that. Her mother didn't teach her that we were gay, and little Kaysen didn't know we were different. She had no idea of the hatred around her. She really was the first person in my family I didn't have to tell I was gay. This one random exchange with a small child changed me. It gave me a sense of hope that I could be myself within my family. It freed me to open up to the possibilities of a life of love and acceptance within my own family. That's something I had never known before, and it was taught to me by a child. Something I didn't realize at the time, I was having my awakening. The beginning of what I needed to become for true happiness. To discover my love of food, the desire to learn the ways of my mother through food, my hunger to learn and pay tribute to my granddaddy and father that grew the food we needed to stay alive but never really appreciated. I began a journey I didn't know I was on or needed. I began to see around me. I began to love outside my comfort zone. We started meeting our neighbors. John and I went to a church, and I hadn't stepped inside one since childhood. We were married by the pastor, and our family and friends were there and showed nothing but love and support. I'm still proud to this day knowing that my mother watched from afar via a live Facebook feed. Around this time of changes, I remember a co-worker from Australia, Paul Waterworth, and his wife Vicky were visiting Florida at the same time John and I were there visiting my family before we got married. They wanted to meet me for lunch and catch up. I had spent about 6 years traveling down under, and we'd become very close friends. We would meet for dinners or go sightseeing, and we jokingly called his wife our Queen of Darkness. I was terrified of what they may think knowing I was gay. Here I was, about 50 years old, and still worrying about what coworker or friends that live literally on the other side of the planet would think. As frightened as I was, there's no way I would tell the guy I was falling for that he had to stay in the hotel alone while we went out to lunch. When we met them in the parking lot, I swallowed my trepidations and introduced John as my partner and roommate. I couldn't have asked for any better reception than we received. Vicky opened her arms and hugged John and said, "Now we have someone else to love." We spent the afternoon having a wonderful lunch, and I showed them around the historic downtown. And I wonder if they felt all of this too. Did they feel the walls I had been in around them crumbling? I know I did. However, I instantly became all of myself around them. I now know that within these swirling changes, I was becoming woke. I read a quote that said, "Your child only gets one childhood, and it will affect how they view the world, how they love, how they trust, and how they feel about themselves. Every time you interact with them, you have the power to cherish or crush their spirit." And that hit deep. If you're listening to my voice and have been taught that being woke is a bad thing, please let me help you learn something different. Well, we all know the horrible connotations that are being attached to the word woke now. It's spattered with disdain across many media outlets, as if changing yourself to be more loving of others is wrong. We should be ashamed of wanting to teach our children the true past of our country because it makes them uncomfortable. It's slathered upon us like we're supposed to take a bath and cleanse ourselves from the notion. We are now living in a time when the innocence of our little caissons are being tarnished by hate-filled ideologies. As we see and hear all around us, our society that has made such great strides toward equality is being pulled back into a time when our differences make us fodder for bullies. So far back that laws are being enacted to do this very thing. Our Constitution is now being turned against us to allow for this to transpire. We're on the back foot being labeled as pedophiles, groomers, and socialist degenerates that want nothing but everything for free. Our heartfelt ideas of inclusion and support of one another are continually strung around our necks as if a wet blanket over a fire. Eric Liu, a second-generation Taiwanese American, CEO and co-founder of Citizen University, which is a nonprofit group that teaches people how to cultivate civic power, was recently asked this question. Some parents and legislators are campaigning against what they call woke schooling in public classrooms. School boards and teachers are being pressured not to teach history that they say shames people. If this battle against wokeism in public schools is successful, what will the end result be? Mr. Liu said, the result will be a citizenry that is less capable of self-government. An education that forces every student to avoid the uncomfortable parts, to steer clear of anything that might cause students discomfort, is going to leave all students more emotionally brittle, more civically weak, and less capable of governing themselves. The point of public education is to make citizens capable together of living together in a diverse community. If all you've gotten is whitewashed history and that everybody was a good guy and don't talk about stuff that makes people uncomfortable, then the minute you graduate and walk into a community where there are people with different views and where there are bad things that have persisted since the beginning of our country that have gone unacknowledged, then when you walk into the real world outside of the classroom, you are less capable of participating in democracy. And I agree with that. Now we see in Florida, where I'm from, the Parental Rights in Education bill. This has made the Sunshine State ground zero in America's culture wars. Signed into law this past April, the bill prohibits discussion of sexual orientation or gender identity in the state's public schools in kindergarten through the 3rd grade. It also allows parents to sue school districts that expose their children to material that is not age appropriate. Whatever that is and who decides it is unknown. Critics see the bill as an attempt to weaponize the idea of parental rights to marginalize LGBTQ people. As we've seen recently, The trend in high court judicial proceedings are leaning further and further away from acceptance, all while being served up as their duty to the Constitution. Call it what you will, it's giving many the right to be a bigot. The right to control our own bodies even. Rulings giving states the leeway to decide who should be accepted and who not. What medical care we receive or provide for our children is giving culpable permission for discrimination. So how far does it go? Do we really believe that teachers are teaching second graders to be gay, or is this just a furtherance of using a non-issue to divide us? Are we going to retreat to a time that places shame on children that are different? Growing up in the 60s and 70s, I never remember the sexuality of anyone being discussed at school or otherwise. I don't remember anything outside myself ever being mentioned until the Anita Bryant story in Florida. It was always derogatory, but was a fleeting barb, though very hurtful, and then it was over. To be honest, I think it's still that way. I have found no stories of teachers grooming children to be gay, trans, or anything sexual, just as I was never groomed myself. Do you think that allowing an 8-year-old to say he has 2 moms to his friends is wrong? Should teachers call and scold this child's parents because he's told a story about his moms Aaliyah and Naomi baking the cookies they're eating at snack time? I have been reading on this subject for days. It's quite incomprehensible to me, the attention given to this subject. Website after website telling people that teachers are grooming their children. Many even admit that the idea that pops into most people's head when they hear the term grooming isn't what they're talking about at all. One policy brief on the website for Renewing America says, the word grooming has often been associated with child predators seeking to sexualize children and prepare them for activities with adults. This remains an accurate and deeply disturbing use of the term. However, the word has a more general definition appropriate for a far broader range of behaviors. Merriam-Webster defines groom as to get into readiness for a specific objective. For example, he was being groomed as a political candidate. This general definition captures that broad range of particular activities designed to inculcate or instill. As such, in the context of the commercial and educational initiatives targeting children, i.e. school and television, it is by no means limited to the worst abuses that can be connoted by the term. Indeed, despite objections from defenders, liberals, of the various practices they're tagging with the grooming label, few words could be more apt to capture the nature of the indoctrination by trusted authorities, many of them in custodial positions over children, that has become commonplace in education and entertainment. The claim is not that all teachers are engaged in child predation. Rather, the claim is that as woke activists attempt to turn young kids and minors into political leftists, to groom the next generation of activists, essential and long-standing boundaries that protect those children from inappropriate behavior are eroded. In other words, the process of grooming students or children creates conditions that circumvent established safeguards that are used to ensure appropriate behavior, which leaves children vulnerable to predation. End quote. So in a nutshell, Don't teach our kids to be liberal and minded because it will open them up for those acts. Most people that hear these stories aren't even aware that the grooming being mentioned isn't about sexuality or sex at all. They have the visions, as we most do, of the boogeyman in the van with a sack of candy. So they seem to be saying that third graders shouldn't know anything about gender expression or acceptance of something the parents and the activists grooming them, I guess their own definition, it's grooming, don't like. A teacher can't explain why there is a parade with rainbow flags, or must tell the child to ask their parents why Daryl has 2 daddies. That way the parents can continue to tell the child how horrible these people are, how sinful that is, and that they will burn in hell forever. It will only allow the bigots to speak freely. It erodes the idea of learning. The school environment is just as importantly about social learning as it is scholastic. These attitudes of silencing and controlling educators only accomplishes one single goal: to allow the parents to perpetuate falsehoods about others. You see, it doesn't matter if other parents want their children to be taught inclusivity and acceptance of others. All that matters is they control the narrative of continued bigotry towards people they've been taught to hate or hold in disdain. I won't say there are 0 cases of suspect behavior among anyone, as I can say I was groomed by a school of religious ideologues that made us learn Bible verses and recite them from memory to earn little Bibles and bookmarks with the 23rd Psalm embossed on them, all while it seemed okay to call a little boy or girl hateful names that they learned at home or the schoolyard. I know there is suspect behavior because I lived through that. I lived through people calling me names, and I suffered through the hiding and sneaking around so not to be found out. See, I come from a very Southern family. This is how I was raised. Children could be seen and not heard. These same children should be whipped into submission if disrespectful or bad. Calling people names, treating women with horrible disdain, and male superiority was the norm. Shoot, my father didn't want my mother to work outside our home. I think he believed that if she became aware of her abilities, she may see that there was so much out there waiting for her. So many unfulfilled possibilities. Then there's the notion where little boys that didn't like sports were sissies. I was well into adulthood when I learned what my path had been. I had no idea of the damage I was causing and creating. I didn't think women should be on Navy ships. I didn't think women could play any sports except maybe softball like my sister did. I treated children in much the same way my father had. I called boys and men that were just like my hidden self bad names. I did it for many reasons, but most of them because I was ashamed of who I was, thanks to society. And I was trying to divert attention away from me for fear that someone would find out. But you see, someone taught me that. Do you wake and wonder if we can look and see a future for people like me? We, as Unitarian Universalists, know our faith guides us, compels us to be accepting of all peoples. Our principles implore us to open our arms and hearts to everyone. But can we really do that? Is there a way to accept people into our fold that would call me bad names? I say we have to. I have a personal belief that we as humans have evolved physically just about as far as we can go. Sure, we may get taller or fatter. We may learn to jump higher and run faster. But I believe our future to grow has to be spiritually and emotionally. Our reasoning and human desire to be better has to win out. I always try to weave my own story into my time with you, hoping that if you see me as I am and not the projection you've been given by others, that we both grow. Our humanity is expanded. And here's an example. The 1978 film Midnight Express. I guess most of you have probably seen it. It's a great film, and for decades I thought it depicted the country Turkey. I had no other real representation of what it was like in that faraway land. Then I began to travel there for work. Probably one of the first conversations I had with the people who would become my friends was about this movie. This was shortly after we arrived and heard gunshots outside of our hotel, and we're told, no problem, it's just about a parking dispute. Okay, well, that didn't change my mind or help me relax, but back to the conversation about the movie. They hated it. Every single one. They hated it for the reputation their country had been given by that story. You see, my friend Metin Yulukarau emphatically told me that it's about a prison in Turkey. Prisons in every country are bad, Mel. Only then did I get it. It was a true eye-opener, but absolutely what I needed to hear. In that very moment, I began to relax. I no longer see that horrible image. I see people identical to all of us. Some devout religious, some not. Some smoke cigarettes and drink alcohol, some don't. So you see, people had to teach me that. Just as we have to reach out and help people understand who we are. All of us. We have to become the teachers, or we will continue to revert into ourselves that we've struggled so hard to change for the better. Luckily, I have started my journey of learning and healing. I have traveled outside my comfort zone, from Asia to the Middle East and Europe to Africa, from social democracies and constitutional monarchies to authoritarian kingdoms. Each country so different, yet so much alike. Things like my trip to see a doctor in other countries and being charged $20. Riding the bullet train in Japan or taking a ferry across Long Island Sound. It has all resulted in this coming to understand others, to spend time and make friends from others so very different from myself, no matter the religion, no matter the social status, every single person is the same. We may speak different languages and have varying abilities, but it's only the living conditions and education that are truly different. Being heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual doesn't define all of who we are. But accepting yourself as such is an important part in developing a positive identity and higher self-esteem. Coming out or revealing yourself to those around you is crucial for you to develop a healthy identity. Not being honest with yourself and others means having to lie about your relationships and pretending to be someone you're not. It means constantly splitting your soul into smaller pieces to be accepted by others. If you do this, indications are that you are at a greater risk for suicide, substance abuse, and violence, all of which I have survived. I have focused this homily on my experiences as a gay man, but we can insert so many descriptives where that word is. It may be women, minorities, sex workers, homeless, or medically indigent. It's the autistic man or single mother. It's our fellow humans all. We all need to become who we are or get locked into a cycle of self-loathing around certain people. We idly stand by listening and tacitly letting the myths continue. We return to our safe places and wish we had been braver. We need to understand that the younger we allow people to become who they are, the better humanity will be. The sooner we can all learn that humanity isn't a mold, it's a gateway, a beginning of what is still to come. We must bring those so different from ourselves closer. We can only climb higher if we take everyone with us. If parts of humanity continually try to drag us backwards, I don't think we as humans will ever reach or know our full potential. It's not always easy to be Unitarian Universalist, especially around people who are uncomfortable with sexually fluid persons, liberal women who support the right to choose, or men that believe their masculinity doesn't determine their lot in life, and even those of us that don't follow the dogma of most religions. So we try to surround ourselves with people who do support these same ideas. We as Unitarians have to do better. I'm not saying we go running into the streets, but I am saying that every single one of us needs to have that Shorty and Vicky moment. We should all experience the Midnight Express lesson. When you're just enjoying time with people and speak up when the message turns away from our beliefs. We have to tell them our truth. I'm even thinking that we have to be the bridge between. We have to all become the teachers now because someone taught them that. You see, I want you all here today, my family, my friends, and anyone who may be watching or listening, that just because you were taught that, it doesn't mean you have to live with that. You have the power to change that. Blessings and thanks for listening.
Stay right there.